just the numbers. Our country was thriving. We were just beating everybody. And by the way, charging China massive taxes and tariffs, taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. We never took in 10 cents. And they viewed it as a romantic period, I think. And I think that's really why it's doing so well, because there is a lot of romance to the book. It was, despite all of the vicious hoaxes and scams that they pulled and made up stories like Russia, Russia, Russia. You know, you had the Mueller, you had impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2. Despite all of that, they view it as a very glamorous time because our country was doing so well, and we were respected. Putin respected us, and President Xi of China respected us. Kim Jong-un respected us. They all did. I tell you, Iran really respected us. They weren't doing a thing, and now they're going to have. Now they don't even talk to the United States. They won't even talk, and they want money. They want billions and billions of dollars just to sit down. And people viewed it as a very beautiful and maybe romantic time in a sense, despite all of the nonsense by the other side. And the radical left, I call it, because that's what it is. They're sick. So it was a beautiful time, and people loved it.
Yes, it was a beautiful time, and people loved it. Kind of like what we're going to be talking about tonight with the Cosby Show. This Myles Pascal Roman from This Is Revolution. I'm Matt Leck. Hello, David.
Hey, man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have Jason and Pascal on. They do a great show over at This Is Revolution. Talking about a lot of things. It's nice to get other sort of hosts of shows, because you can have sort of like all sort of wide range of discussions, right? Like you don't have to be like, oh, you're the expert on nuclear arms, so let's brush up on nuclear arms and try to not be an idiot. You can kind of just bounce things off. We'll be talking about the trucker protests a little bit. What is a revolution? What should we be imagining? That sort of stuff. I'm looking forward to that conversation. But first, what do we got some Jamal Bowman news, David?
Yeah, we do have some Jamal Bowman news. I'm all hot and bothered, y'all. So I'm going to be I'm going to try my very best to keep my cool on these things. But the past few days have actually been very, very frustrating on a few different fronts on the U.S. left, and I want to take some time before we get our friends on to talk about growing pains structure in the long game. I'll tell you all right now, this is a little bit inside baseball, talking about some things that are going on within DSA, but I think these are larger scale lessons that are worth understanding and are very helpful for us as we're trying to build a movement that not just is right in the sense of our critique of capitalism and the critique of the system, but actually has the capacity to act. Right. And that's the transition that we need to be focusing on, because there have been plenty of generations of people who have had the best critique of capitalism and the best critique of imperialism. And yet those systems maintain despite how much you're criticizing them from the outside. Right? We have to find ways to build power and capacity to act. So a few months ago now, there was uproar, and it was righteous uproar, about Jamal Bowman, the congressman from New York, an endorsed member of DSA, because of his votes on Israel, his comments on BDS, and his clear moving away, not just from positions that are popular among the membership of the Democratic Socialists of America, but positions that have been explicitly voted on by the membership, right? And if we're trying to build an organization that is able to articulate our demands on the national scale and in Congress, we need to have accountability from people who are elected as members of this organization. There are some power dynamics here that are worth investigating, but this is a very, very basic aspiration, right? This is just something that we should be able to be working toward building the capacity to do. So this comes out, and there is massive debate, both from people within the DSA and then from a very, very large cohort of people who love to comment on what's going on internally in that organization. And the organization decided not to remove or expel Jamal Bowman And there are reasons for this, right? And again, Matt and I talked about this pretty much at length on the show. You can go back and find those episodes and videos. But there are reasons for this, particularly the reason that, we need to be very, very careful about the authority that we're giving certain bodies within that organization to decide who gets to be a member and who's going to get kicked out, right? Because you can imagine situations where that could be abused, right? But again, this is a growing pain moment in the organization because it has been successful in the sense that there are people in Congress who identify themselves as members of this organization, right? Which is a hell of a lot more than a lot of previous left-wing organizations can say. That doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but these are the kind of growing pains that come with success, right? So there are reasons that they decided not to expel him, but regarding Bowman, it was communicated very firmly that this was not acceptable. There were avenues that were set up to communicate the frustration and the critique with his positions. And there was essentially the threat that the organization would not re-endorse him in the next election cycle if these issues are not resolved, right? And this created some splinters within the movement. Obviously, there's a lot of debate. And of course, people on the outside, particularly the outside detractors who really just thrive on criticizing actually existing movements, they use this to say that, well, the DSA has no real, commitment to Palestine, which is frankly bullshit at this point. And I just want to update y'all and talk about a few things regarding this, right? So I'm going to pull this up real quick because this happened just yesterday, I believe. Jamal Bowman withdraws co-sponsorship bill backing Israel's Abraham Accords. So this happened, and it's very significant for DSA, for the fight for Palestinian liberation, and for politics in this country in general. New York Congressman Jamal Bowman plans to withdraw his co-sponsorship of legislation supporting Israel's normalization agreements with Arab states and will vote no when the bill comes up for consideration in the House of Representatives, according to a letter Bowman sent to his constituents today that was obtained by the Jewish Currents, right? You can read the full article later on your own time, right? But the point here is that Bowman has made a significant shift, right? And there's multiple factors that played into this, but there can be no doubt that what happened internally within the Democratic Socialists of America played a role in this. I think undoubtedly Amnesty International, God, it took them forever, but official position on Israel being an apartheid state certainly also played a role as well. Sorry, Matt.
Well, that's why it takes an organization like Amnesty forever to acknowledge reality like that, because they know the political importance of stuff like that. It gives, people cover, and DSA is just more like, of a push in that direction. There's certain, and I've seen, I think maybe probably NDP members in Canada use the opportunity of the Amnesty report to take a firmer stance on what's going on there as well.
No, and like this is the point here, right? What we're seeing from Bowman and from other members of Congress is very significant for the opposition to the apartheid system that exists in Israel, right? And the United States plays a major role in supporting that system and funding that system, right? So it's very important that these shifts are happening. But I wanted to focus sort of like on the left and these internal organizations, and like this is also an example of pressure working, right? Natalie Shure has a really great piece that just came out in the latest issue of Jacobin. I highly suggest people read. And it's about AOC and the squad and the kind of end of this honeymoon phase of an organization like the DSA and these elected members who bear the name of this organization, right? And this is the tension that we've been really dancing with on this program, Matt, since the beginning, right? Is that you have an organization that is building capacity to win races in some districts, right? But we still have not built up the kind of national capacity that we're the first person that these people pick up the phone for, right? And trying to figure out a way to balance our growing left-wing socialist organization with very, very powerful media stars that are, the squad and people like AOC and Bowman and the rest of them. And it's not one of those things that is an either or. It's not one of those things that is very clear cut. It's a contradiction, and it's difficult. In the piece, Natalie Shure, borrowing from someone else, uses the metaphor sort of like riding a tiger, right? You have people who can get you somewhere very quickly, but you don't really control them, right? And trying to figure out as an organization, how much control we're going to need from people who are members of the organization, is a live and open question. I think that we do need a hell of a lot of discipline. And two, The other question is, how are we going to deal with an organization that is basically able to propel people into positions of power that far exceed our organizational capacity, right? These are live, open questions and debates that are happening across the left, and most importantly, within organizations like the DSA. We're trying to find this balance. It's not there yet. I will say, in regards to this Bowman example, right, that is an example of a positive shift. It's not perfect, right? It's not finished yet. Bowman still hasn't, rescinded all of his bad positions on Israel-Palestine. But this is certainly an example that pressure is working, that some of these strategies are working, and it's something that we should be able, especially since we were, talking about this on the show, be able to commend and educate our audience about. Because it's really frustrating to me about a lot of these kind of debates and these flashpoints, right, is that they happen and they're presented in a kind of vacuum, right? What's very frustrating to me about, for example, a lot of the outside detractors of these organizations is that they're very, very quick to jump in whenever there's controversy, right? But whenever there's a kind of slow, and yes, I get it, it's boring, but procedural drama of figuring out how you want to manage a large organization, right? They're very, very, they're few and far between. They don't pop their heads up, right? And again, this is not to say that everything has been perfect or solved right now, but this is just an example of a process starting to reveal itself, and we can make our own analysis of whether or not we think that is working, right? But I wanted to note this, and we'll get to our guest in just one second. But I want to note this because this is the kind of lessons that we're trying to learn as we're building up a left-wing movement in this country, right? Because we don't have the luxury of having the 20, 40, 60 years that are probably necessary to be able to build up the structures and the rootedness that we need to be able to build a strong, radical, revolutionary left in this country. But we need to have the capacity to understand what things we need to be building, even if we're trying to build them on a shorter time scale than would be ideal, right? Because you have to understand this, and I remind people of this time and time again. Entering the state is just the beginning. Bernie Sanders gets in the Oval Office, it's going to be an immediate rebellion from the state apparatus, from the entrenched powers of capital, right? And we're going to need to build organizations and movements that have the capacity to being able to deal with and overcome those hurdles, right? We have to be able to be two-tracked minded when it comes to politicians, right? We have to be able to build accountability, but we really need to be focused on base building. And when I mean, this, I don't mean in this kind of like purely big tent way. No, it's very important to have very clear principles and very clear organizational, guiding stars that we're saying, this is what we're doing. We're building an anti-capitalist organization. We're building an anti-imperialist organization, right? I think, again, principles matter. I think that people who thought that we should ignore the Palestine question because it might be a little thorny or difficult to deal with people in Congress are making a tactical mistake. Because if you drop Palestine now, you're 100% going to drop them later, right? When it's easy to drop, when it's, it's going to be a lot easier for these kind of people in power to drop them in the future than to fight for them right now.
Yeah, it's exactly. And the amnesty thing, those are the tailwinds. Again, Democratic majority for Israel, let's just point that out there. They're going to be spending lots of money, and that's where it's going to be scaring candidates. I think, just something to keep an eye on it. And also, just with regards to the DSA stuff, I am a member of DSA, but, as I don't really go to meetings or anything like that because I feel it weird as a media person, whatever. But, I always... and I think criticism of the organization is great, but the rush to a conclusion about something that is clearly undergoing a process, right? Seems very suspicious to me, especially how repetitive it gets from certain quarters. I'll just say that. But
and that's that's what I really wanted to highlight. Right now, it's there are what's been frustrating to me, and we saw this over the weekend here in Austin, where there was a Austin DSA organized a very successful rally of around 700 people, right? The vast majority of those people who were there weren't necessarily DSA members; they were members of the public. To hear people talk about the Green New Deal, right? And it was a very well done rally. because not only did it sort of talk about it as like the kind of principal aspiration, but it's very, very much rooted in the shift that needs to happen in the environmental movement, which is moving from just sort of talking about environmentalism as a kind of like moral principle to understanding as class war and as a class fight, right? Recognizing that if you're serious about the Green New Deal, you need to get buy-in from labor. You need to be organizing within people in the oil and gas industry, right? You can't just sit on the sidelines or act like those people aren't going to be the vehicles, the people who are actually going to help us transition into a different state of affairs, right? It was a very successful rally. And in it, at the end, AOC speaks, and she gets heckled by a character on Israel. And again, like, it's completely justified to criticize AOC on her positions on Palestine. In fact, we spent a hell of a lot of the time on our show doing it, right? But the character who did it, I'm not going to play these videos, but you can go to my Twitter, and I've lined them up for you. Is somebody who is frankly a crank, right? Somebody who promotes the most anti-Semitic conspiracies that you can imagine. Just completely baseless stuff. This is not somebody who's rooted in the Palestinian struggle. They just know that this is something that they can use to get a kind of attention for themselves, right? And this is the kind of bad faith criticism. Again, it's not that somebody's criticizing AOC. It's that there are people outside who know that they can use these kind of things to create, media spectacles to benefit themselves, because there's a lot of people who are involved in left media primarily as a business, and not necessarily as trying to bring information and perspective to folks, right? So I wanted to just note, since we've talked about this a lot on this program, that there has been success in movement on the Bowman question. It's not solved. It's not perfect. It's not done yet. But to understand that sometimes these kind of top line conversations that you see, you're not the first person to see that there are contradictions within an organization that is trying to become more class rooted, right? And politicians who get sort of shot off into stardom. And that we need to be able to dance with those contradictions and to work through them. I guess, like, if I were to just put a pin in it, like, what's frustrating to me is that there's this kind of like outside detractor group of folks, who saw, for example, when Bowman made the statements that he did about Palestine, and they were like, they thought that they were the only person who recognized that this was a problem and that this was a contradiction. When in fact, people within that organization, people within DSA immediately got involved in a pretty robust and significant debate, and people were trying to find solutions and a way to act and response to this. And I think that this is like one of those moments where, like, if we want to move from just doing critique or just doing protest and moving into politics, you really, really need to start reorienting yourself from thinking about politics as something that you engage in as an individual, right? But this politics actually being something that you engage in as a collective and as a group, and to do that work and start to get organized yourself.
Yeah, I think Adolf Reed has made the point that it's like a Protestantism, like trying to find if someone's going to be saved through grace or through works or something like that. It's like the new version of that. Well, thank you very much, David. I know this was getting at you this week.
I know. I'm ready to to hopefully be able to move on.
Yeah. Well, let's move right to our guests. We got first Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat audience and to the hosts of Left on.
Oh, nice. I love that.
I was listening to the breakdown podcast episode, Jason, that you did with Teray Reed, and you had the applause and stuff, and that is a really nice little welcome. So I'm glad you brought it. Yeah,
dude. If I have the ability to go on a show and have my soundboard with me, then
you're like an android.
Superhuman.
There's some new effects we got to put on. We got to put the throat balls on there.
Oh Lord.
Oh gosh.
And this, for people who are familiar, is our friend also Jason Myles, also of this Revolution podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight too, friend.
Oh, dude, thanks for having me. I'm actually kind of bummed that we don't all live closer, and we could have watched the Super Bowl. I had a Super Bowl party at my house in Mexico. You guys were totally invited.
With you and
How'd that go?
I didn't blow up the house this time.
This time?
Oh yeah, so I have a gas stove, and the first time I had a little get together at the house, I turned the gas on and I was like talking and totally forgot to open the stove, and then I went to light it, and that shit, the whole
Oh my
kitchen got
God.
orange, and that shit blew off the wall, and then the pots flew up. But it's fine. It's fine.
Man, I just want to talk about different cooking near misses.
They do it differently down there, I guess.
Oh man. I'm just thinking about the time I was new to cooking, brand new, living in a place in Fargo, and thought a good way to get the grease off was to just get it really hot. And I decided a good way to cool that down really fast was to add water to it.
Oh,
So I have an on fire
0 for 2.
skillet. Yeah, I had an on fire skillet, and had to go out onto my fourth floor balcony and hold it over the giant snowbank. And I was about to throw it, but luckily the wind kind of put it out.
luckily you were in Fargo in the winter. It sounds like, which
Exactly.
is one of the coldest places I've ever been.
Yeah, me too. And I kind of miss it, honestly. So yeah, you're in Mexico, Pascal. You're in Miami, is that correct?
That's correct, my friend.
How's Miami reacting to the news about the coastlines? Is it causing
The
panic?
coastlines are evaporating because of global warming.
Yeah, there's further news on that.
Are you familiar with the politics of Miami?
Yeah, the politics. Yeah, the reality of climate change is not as permeable as the rock underneath Florida that is going to soak up all the water.
I understand. I mean, Florida is one of those states where a liberal is considered someone who is a Nixon supporter. Man, this is.
I was in Miami for a friend of mine broke up with his fiance, and I got to go to get her ticket to the Rolling Loud Music Festival, and that's the
big one.
Yeah, and we took a Uber out to the place where Nixon I wanted to see Nixon's beach. He had some kind of beach there, but it was all private then.
It's possible. I don't. It's in COVID. It's been so long since I've been out hanging out. It's like I might be on Mars right now and not even be aware of it. Quite frankly. But Miami has persistently reactionary, very, very ethnically balkanized politics with varying kind of Caribbean and Latin cultures and communities, which for me, I don't mind because I don't want to say it's not diverse, it's balkanized because it's not like everyone just kind of hangs and chills. The young people do, but there's a lot of kind of tension in the town, and the politics here are very, very, very reactionary, particularly to our type of left politics, socialists, leftist, capitalists. And if you're interested in places like, Venezuela, Cuba, or any of that stuff, forget about it, man. You're going to get a lot of right-wing Latinos kind of breathing down your neck.
That's also why Pascal doesn't leave the house.
Oh no, I don't mind them. I just
he's Miami is looking for him.
Hey, but it's also the the hometown of our left-wing Spanish prince Nando Villa.
Nando, it's funny. I did a show with Nando with Big Woz Lambre, the Haitian brother, and we talked about Haitian history and stuff. That's what Wozni brought me on with, and Nando kind of enjoyed the narrative, but we didn't get a chance to talk Miami politics. I hope I get a chance to be on a show with Nando and we talk. Maybe we should get him on our show, Jason, at some point. I'm sure we can make that happen.
He's just up the road. Actually, we talked about him and his coming down here.
But I would, because I don't let Nando is Cuban. Is that correct? Is he Cuban?
No, I think he's Spanish.
From Spain?
I thought he was Cuban.
Okay, because I'm very interested in knowing his trajectory of left politics as a Miami, South Floridian Latino, because I thought he was Cuban, and that's why I was really interested. I was like, hold on, like he's from Miami, he's Cuban, and he has left politics. How does that work? But you tell me he's Spanish from Spain. I mean, he still lives down here. But I would really be fascinated to hear his kind of journey into left politics growing up in South Florida.
Yeah, you should get into it. I mean, yeah, definitely reach out. I mean, Nano's a good buddy, so if you
And
need
you know
the
what else I
contact.
learned too? I think it was the first time I was on Ben Burgess' show is that I learned he got his PhD at University of Miami. I was gobsmacked. I was like, "What? You were down in Miami for like a period of time of years?" He was like, "I was like, yeah, I got my PhD at University of Miami." I was like, "Oh man, so you really know this kind of reactionary town?" He was like, "Yeah." And very well. He talked about how he went into some kind of public restaurant or a diner one day and he like screamed out "Viva Fidel" or something like that. And I was like, "My man, really? You went out like that?" Okay. I was like, interesting. Okay.
No, Ben's been all over. He was in Korea too.
Yeah.
Really doing like postdoctoral work?
Teaching.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad. I shouldn't be telling everybody's story on the podcast, but I believe so.
He was teaching.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ben's Ben's an interesting cat.
Yeah, Ben's definitely been around a couple of places. He's interesting to talk to, but it's another guy who, I never really got. Ben's one of those guys you get a sense that he's been a leftist since he was 3.
The funniest thing about Ben is like get him talking about American like Trotskyist sects, and like he knows them all. Like he could give you the entire history, and he knew a decent amount of people, and a lot of them too.
Wow, he knows all of.
Well, he's not that old. I don't want to make him sound like an old man, but he could break it down pretty well.
I'm older than Ben, but he's a little closer to my age.
But he definitely has he's in that cohort of cats we have on the left who are into the cerebral theory, who are into Marxist literature, Das Kapital, all of the various iterations of left scholarship, left sectarian. I mean, he's very into it. Varn is like that as well. I like Varn a lot. Everyone says that Varn is the white me, or I'm the black Varn, or
Varn is Sean King.
Varn looks like Sean King. I will not insult Varn by saying he is Sean King. Varn looks like Sean King. Because Varn has a way better politics.
Motherfuckers in the same place at the same time. Until I see that shit happen, Varn is Sean King flooding my timeline with fucking black trauma porn.
Varn has way better politics than Sean King.
Would guess
for
so.
Sure.
I would hope so, Lord.
Sean King is I mean, I wouldn't even insult Rad Libs by calling him a Rad Lib.
The thing with Sean King is just like he's been around long enough.
How does Sean King get all that shit first? Why do people keep running to him if they got?
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand how he's still.
I've never seen a guy accused of scamming and hustling so many different times and always bouncing back. I'm like, do you have to get indicted by like the feds or the IRS for him to like?
Al Sharpton had to take that Tawana Brawley L. Did he not?
He did.
Sean King takes no L's. Is it because he's like?
He's like the Energizer Bunny man. He just
like real talk, Pascal. Why does this fool not take L's?
It's really, it's a really good question when you say that, man, because he, in the last 5 years, he's been accused of some seriously unseemly stuff. I've never met the guy personally. I don't know anything about him personally, but I have talked to people who have interfaced with him, and I've never escaped getting a story about shadiness. I'm not going to make allegations that can be legally actionable here, but there's always some kind of connotation of something shady.
Yeah.
When he was involved, I remember my beat. I mean, when it became official for me with Sean King, is that he made a comment about Black Agenda Report, I think on Twitter, during the beginning of the Trump administration. Someone was kind of getting into a kind of Twitter battle with him, and they cited Black Agenda Report as a source in an article. And on Twitter, he called Black Agenda Report Russian propaganda.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
That's something else, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Glenn Ford
And then
was still
Bernie
alive
gave him the
then.
call.
And I think somebody published an article just trashing that motherfucker. I think he follows me on Twitter, as a matter of fact, Sean. But
Yeah,
someone wrote an
Outside of
article.
the Russians, man, he's trying to. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, I've never got the full skinny from Ben Dixon on what happened with their attempt at something, but you guys should,
I didn't
talk
want
about
to. I didn't
that.
want to bring Ben's name into this whole shenanigans. But one of the people who I remember, I've never talked to Ben about this. I've been on Ben's show a couple of times, but I remember reading there were articles maybe in the Intercept or something about them at one time trying to come together and form a publication or something of that nature, and it didn't go well. It was very questionable. Blah blah blah. But I like Ben. I think Ben is I like Ben a lot. I think Ben is actually a very nice guy, and it just didn't work out. There was some allegation of some untowardliness in terms of practices there. But listen, I don't know the guy, and I can't definitively say he's done anything criminal, shady, illegal. All I know is that there's a lot of accusations that always come up about this guy. I don't see how they get resolved. Every time he's accused of something, he starts posting pictures about when he got surgery and his jaw was broken when he, like, a few years ago, and they did XYZ to him to get some sympathy, and he just comes back. And the only reason why I really, really I kind of dislike the cat is that he tried to shade a publication that I had been working with for years and discredited as Russian propaganda.
What year was that? Do you mind it?
What'd you say?
What year was that?
That was early in the Trump administration.
So that's when everyone was getting really wild too. That was when, not that it would have been okay to do now, but that's when people were really, really frothing at the mouth to get you if they could, point to you're getting tried by Russia or something.
I don't know if you guys have known this. I mean, I don't say it often, but Black Agenda Report was the only Black publication that was suppressed by Google and search engines as a result of an article that came out. I think it was in the Washington Post that tried to categorize them as Russian.
So it was proper not, because I was doing stuff with Counterpunch and a few other groups too. I was on one of those dumbass lists.
Yeah,
I was just broke as hell trying to send a couple pieces in from place to place. They're like, this guy's getting paid by Putin.
Because the ruble exchange rate, it was so bad.
It was just a really, it's very funny now. It was honestly a very scary time, to just see everybody just sprinting into, I don't know, conspiracy world. So many normal people just really believing that most of the so much of the media, especially anything that was indie or alternative, was just some kind of Russian psyop, and respectable people running with that.
I'm not gonna lie, I pretty much didn't publish anything during the Trump administration for one piece. I chilled for politically. I basically went into observer mode because I felt that the climate was so absolutely bananas and crazy. My first reaction when Trump got elected was okay, I hate Hillary. I didn't want her to win. I didn't want Trump to win either. I wish both of them could have lost, which is not possible. But whatever. Okay, Trump won. Let's wait and see. This is my opinion, and I might catch some flack for this. I feel that the posture that people had towards Trump off the bat actually made him worse than he would have been if everyone just chilled, backed off, and see where it went naturally. In other words, I think that the Russian allegations made him more fascist-like. I think people calling him a fascist from the beginning. Trump is the kind of guy that, you call him a piece of shit, he'll be like, I'll show you a piece of shit. You want to be a piece of shit? I can be a piece of shit. So my position was that I think that the initial listen, I'm not a Trump guy. I don't like Trump at all, but I'm going to be very objective. I've never seen a president come into office and get such absolute condemnation before walking into the freaking Oval Office.
You don't remember the Millard Fillmore presidency?
That was too far. I mean, people went ape shit berserk. Yes, he made a couple of racist statements about Mexicans. He was, I mean, yeah, I'm from New York, man. Trump is a piece of shit. I've known Trump since I've been around Trumpism since I was a kid. But what I'm saying is that, and I do believe that Trump came to a point where he started to flirt with fascism towards the end of his presidency. I don't deny that. What I'm saying is that I think it was the reactions of the liberals and the left, even before he walked in the door, and the mainstream media that pushed him to become even worse of an asshole, because he's got the kind of personality where he will double down on being an asshole just because you treat him like an asshole.
But Pascal, we didn't come here to talk about Trump.
Well,
No, I mean,
I wouldn't.
it's fine.
Let's go. I wouldn't mind talking about it. I mean, I'm trying to think of like, so the very first things like the
Muslim ban.
the Muslim ban, right? Like that's the first.
Oh, was that? But was that before Mexicans are not the best?
Oh no!
Yeah, he said that on the campaign.
That was like him. He like came down from the fucking escalator in some tower,
screaming.
And it's like they're not sending their best. Some are rapists. Yeah. But I mean, as far as like the, I mean. Like, do you what's how about relation to that, Pascal? Like, do you think
Trump was Trump was a racist piece of shit American president? But which president hasn't been a racist piece of shit American president? I would say Obama.
Well, can I say something on this? Is like one of the things with Trump, especially early on, and like it was something that's sort of frustrating in the kind of post-Trump period that we're in now, where it's like the United States, for example, like we have a police force, ICE, which regularly goes and like terrorizes people all across the country, particularly, in places like where I'm from, Texas, California, everywhere. Like, and like that's a frightening concept, right? You can paint that picture to people. It's like there are armed people coming around and capturing people and, putting them in a van and like putting them into a facility, right? And that's been going on for a while. And it was like when Trump was doing it, like people for whatever reason, like didn't try to treat those horrors of the American state as reasonable, like they do when Biden or Obama does it. Do you get what I mean? And
because of campaigns,
and that's the thing that's like is so frustrating. I think now is that like we had this moment where it's like, man, I remember in the Trump years being like, well, I think a lot of people are really recognizing just how horrific the American state is. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of people just solely ascribed it, to Trump and Trumpism. And, now that he's gone, it's like, well, people aren't as upset about ICE and ICE raids, right? And like, they might not feel as confident to be as egregious as they might have been during the Trump, but like the actual, like the facts on the ground, like the material reality of it is fairly similar.
Well, kids in cages, right?
Yeah.
No one really cares about kids in cages. No one talks about deportation. I mean, moving here to Mexico, I have met enough people that were deported under Obama.
Wow.
That's their beef because Obama ramped up a lot of I'm talking about people that lived the majority of their lives in the States.
I hate that so much.
And maybe they committed a minor offense as a youth, and you're snatching up people that are professionals at their job and throwing them on. They just throw you on the other side. These cats weren't even from here when their parents immigrated.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I do agree that the whole Trump phenomenon really helped obfuscate, what Clinton and Obama did when it came to immigration law, because the wall that is up in parts of the border, that's what a 94 thing, 96 thing. That's not a Trump phenomenon. So Trump helped cover a lot of that shit up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kids in cages itself implies that adults in cages, which America does that more than any other country, like is fine, right? Like we're going to take an issue with kids. Well, guys, let's. That's all I wanted to talk about. Actually, we got through my topic. No.
All right, take it easy.
Sean King and no.
Sean King and Trump. I mean, this is like a throwback episode of like 2017, isn't it?
We even started with the Trump. It's a romantic period.
Lord in heaven.
I want to play a little bit of this documentary you made, Jason. This Bill Cosby Ain't Your Daddy video essay came out, looks like last week.
Some long smart guy title, and Pascal goes, nah, that's not it. That's not it. Call it Bill Cosby Ain't Your Daddy.
So,
Like,
I think
okay,
it worked.
it worked.
yeah.
It worked. It's fucking
And first of all, I want to talk meta about this because David and I we used to do the illicit histories on TMBS. We really like this format and like the way you make something that actually is durable and lasting and scripted, and then you react to it. But here is this essay here.
Let's just to wrap it up for us, for now at least, to give you the situation as we know it. 18 confirmed deaths.
Now, you know there's a curfew on most of the city area, Los Angeles City, Torrance, Compton, Long Beach, San Fernando rather. Gasoline sales, fill your tank, but you can't get it otherwise. Schools are closed, UCLA is closed, but the hospital and medical centers are open, but be prepared to display your ID. If you have to go anywhere tonight, be prepared to show who you are and what your business is.
Much of USC, the Santa Monica beaches are closed too, by the way.
Okay, we've got Jess here. Now, there's been some change in back and forth about what Bill Cosby intends to do because he's very concerned about this and very, of course...
Not anymore, because we're on a welcome change of pace for 8 years. Bill Cosby has made us laugh, has made us cry, has made us think. The Cosby Show has been a breath of fresh air in a sometimes crazy and chaotic world, much like we saw today. But tonight is the final episode of the Cosby Show, their farewell. Today, Mayor Tom Bradley urged everyone in Los Angeles to remain home, to stay off the streets. He also suggested they might want to watch the Cosby Show because he believes, and we believe, we need this time, a bit of a cooling off period, giving us some breathing space. Maybe a time to remember what Thursday nights were like before all this madness began in Los Angeles. Here at KNBC, we'll use this hour to update the stories, and during this hour, if major events dictate, be assured we will return to our coverage immediately. We hope you use this hour to say goodbye and thanks to a good friend.
The Cosby Show remained on the air and in syndication for years, taking NBC from the network gutter to programming gold. Cosby even spun off his television daughter, Lisa Bonet, into a long-lived sitcom, A Different World, a show about black college life slightly more edgy than its predecessor, but still not ruffling any advertising feathers. As Cliff and Claire gracefully walked off set for the show's finale, the LA uprisings were in full effect. As the gleeful audience gave a standing ovation to America's first black family, the cast members gallantly walk off into the sunset unaware or unfazed by the events unfolding just a short drive away in South Central. You couldn't write a more accurate juxtaposition to the man who played an undercover government agent in the era when COINTELPRO infiltration destroyed the Black Panther Party. The patriarchal St. Cosby worked for years to subconsciously erase the radical legacy of black struggle and turn it into a bootstrapping tale of racial uplift. He's part of the black conservative generation that turns King from an anti-war socialist into a clean-cut preacher who just wanted equality with his white brethren, forever captured in 1963. Where people like Charles Barkley scoffed at the idea of himself as role model, Cosby embraced the moniker and gladly curated the experience. America's father figure was never a real person, an entirely fictional character whose elevation to real-life father figure was as ludicrous to envision as a real-life J.J. Evans or Steve Urkel. When the first rape allegations against Cosby first surfaced, many ignored them, much like people did with R. Kelly. The popular opinion was that the accusers were just money-hungry women out to take a black man down. But unlike with Kelly, for many, the allegations of drugging and raping women seemed as unnatural for a man like Cliff Huxtable.
All right.
And there's David as well.
I'm here, sorry.
Now, I'll be honest with you guys. Cosby was a little bit before my time.
I can't even believe you just said that.
He's young. These guys are in their 20s.
Yeah, I was
It's
four.
impossible for me to conceptualize that.
Yeah, I'm not in my 20s. To be fair, I was born in '88, so I was about four when that
I'm the last one.
that episode aired. But we had Aaron Thorpe on to talk about his piece on nostalgia, and he was watching The Last Dance in this sort of '90s era, and very much like we talked about what cultural artifact would you rebuild civilization around, like the way Station 11 uses Shakespeare, for instance, in a comic book. Cosby is one that really pervaded society to the point where, I've seen enough basically through reruns that you could formulate a society around it. But Jason, talk to us a little bit about. I really like that thesis you have. The temporal context there of the final episode, and even on the news, they're like, everybody go distract yourself. Like as
Mhm.
far as like what the media is for. Yeah, give us what's the background on that?
So I actually remember when that happened, and I watched the Cosby series that W. Kamau Bell did. There was a different video essay I was going to do that was going to touch on Cosby, but was going to touch more on the New York that Pascal grew up in. So I kind of spent a week traumatizing Pascal video footage of his era of New York. And I think, and Pascal brought this up. We had an episode a while back where we had got into a conversation about juxtaposing Cosby and Dick Gregory. And Pascal had brought up the point that Cosby was kind of used as a way to, erase Dick Gregory, and the fact that he was looked at as this kind of everyone's dad. I never understood that even growing up, because I was like, well, I have a dad. I don't know why.
That's exactly what I said.
My dad, I don't even live with that motherfucker, and I still know he's more of a dad than this nigga. But anyway, there's these parasocial relationships that people have, even in the context in which we all exist in, where people assume I know everything about you. I know your politics because you fit into my little box of understanding. And what was interesting about Cosby is that all these people thought they understood him, and Bill Cosby, the man, kind of became Cliff Huxtable as he got older. And I didn't put it in the piece, but there was a lot of footage I had got of him post the show where he's doing the pull up your pants stuff. This is years before the pound cake speech. And what I found interesting about getting riot footage, I knew about 5 o'clock is when they taped. So that's going on not far from where they're taping Cosby. And to say like, oh, what, go watch Cosby and let's go remember a time when things weren't so bad. Keep in mind where the show is supposed to take place in New York, things were really effing horrible. You have a city that's going broke. You have crazy racial violence probably starting really big time in 84. No, when did not Eula? When's the woman that got shot?
Little bumpers.
Yeah, when was that, Pascal? 84, 82?
It was 82. Earlier.
82, she gets shot, getting served an eviction notice because she's got a knife. You get Bernard Goetz shooting 3 black kids in 84. You get Howard Beach. Yusuf Hawkins doesn't even happen until 90. All this is going on in Cosby's New York, and these kids are immune from it. So his perfect daddom exists in a fantasy land where the kids never have to deal with the real world. So as we are projecting upon this man black excellence, the kids never have to even exist in the real world. So we're constantly watching fantasy, eating up fantasy, and believing that this is how to raise our kids, how to be a perfect husband, how to be a better friend. Remember, he's also the perfect friend. He's just the perfect everything. Man, I just want to be like Bill Cosby. They're Huxtable. And so I definitely wanted to kind of juxtapose the perfect family exiting stage left as the riots are going on literally 20 minutes from the studio.
I mean, that's capitalist realism, like to a T, right?
It's so, Jason, I don't want to interject in your space, but I really appreciate Jason doing this, because what a lot of people don't know about Jason doing that, Jason and I have had long conversations about my experience in New York City growing up during the era of the Cosby years. And to give an example, I sent Jason and Gene and Cuba a video of the man who was mayor of New York City during my teenage and young adult years. And it was literally triggering for me. And I was so infuriated. A friend of mine texted this to me, and he said, you got to see this. This is Ed Koch. This is Ed Koch being interviewed in 1992. And I'm watching this, and this guy is so insanely racist.
The Democrat Ed Koch.
Democrat Ed Koch, right? People ask why I am I was never a member of the Democrat or Republican Party. Ridiculously racist. And I'm watching this and I'm just getting pissed. I'm like, this motherfucker. So I was like, let me show this, because I'm always telling Gene and Cuba and these guys about like why I have what shapes my racial politics, or what has shaped my racial politics. Like I'll be very transparent. I've told this to Jason. I've said this to Gene, and I'll be very honest, and I'm not ashamed to say it. Doing our show with Jason has been therapeutic for me in that it has decreased my racial anger to dealing with white folk. I was generally most of my life, I'll be very honest. I used to tell Tori, I don't fuck with white people. I don't like the motherfuckers. But don't get it wrong, because as Jason knows, I don't like a lot of black people either. So it's actually like a good opportunity. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not one, like I tell Jason all the time. I said, Jason, let me tell you right now, bro. Like, you by far will be more social with white folk casually than I would in years. And I'm not one of these guys who are like, oh, white people are the devil, the white man is evil. That's not my kind of politics. Mm-hmm. I just have had very racially hostile experiences. I've lived in two of the most racist cities in the Northeast, Boston and New York City.
Yes. Yeah. I'll give you that.
I went to a high school with literally Italian mobsters in the 80s. My brother graduated from my same high school 5 years after me, and John Gotti's son was in his class. Literally.
Mm. All right? Did they call you a Moulignan?
I've heard that term many times.
Hey,
there were kids that were involved in the Howard Beach incident that went to my high school. All right. So I'll be very frank. Growing up in New York City was not a place, and I grew up in a nice kind of middle class black neighborhood. I lived at a very, I wasn't in the ghetto in the hood. I lived in Cambria Heights in Jamaica, Queens, which is one of the nicer neighborhoods in Jamaica, Queens. I had black folk who were college educated and working class in my neighborhood. I had black American folk, 2-family households. Most of the kids in my neighborhood went to college and all that. It's not like it was the hood or the ghetto. I wasn't getting excessively harassed by cops by any stretch of the imagination. I went to a predominantly black Catholic elementary school. Then I went to it really starts with me when I go to high school. I went to a very, very good, but predominantly white Catholic high school that had a lot of very racist white ethnics. And that was also around the time of the Ed Koch administration. And it's during this period that all of these things are transpiring, So my kind of racial antennae, and I've never, and it's funny, because people always act like I'm soft on race. It's not that I'm soft on race. It's that I'm very distrusting of people in general off the bat. But like traditionally, like you got to go a long way for me to even say, okay, I can trust you. If you were white, I'll be very honest with you. I'm going to be transparent. I have traditionally been a guy, and Jason will tell you this is very common amongst black guys, educated guys. I was the guy who was like, if you are black and you have a white friend, I don't trust you.
Damn, it's fucked up. You wouldn't bring your white friend.
But black men of my generation, that's very common.
Right. I mean, the Northeast is like is just so different too. I mean, obviously from like I lived in New York for a few years, but like I'm from Austin, and ended up going to high school and middle school in South Carolina, which is a whole other world, And I went to a school that was, minority majority, right? And the thing is there though is that like class and race were very, very much intertwined in like, the Southeast, right? In the sense that like, I'm like kind of white trash, poor person. And like, I lived in the neighborhood, like I was, a white kid, but, compared to, you know, all my neighbors were like people of color, right? Because like if you were working class in that area, you know, that sort of was the way that it tended to be. And it's interesting to hear like what it was like in the Northeast, because it always felt like, at least the way it was sort of imagined in the South, that like those things had sort of, if not been settled, had at least been, weren't as bad as they were in the South. And I'm not saying it was any kind of paradise or anything good even. But it is just like it's not sort of how we imagined it.
No, I mean, again, like I don't want to, like, I was never one of these like Farrakhan 5% of the white man is the devil. All like these Yakub, coming out of like, I thought all that shit was dumb, and I was never kind of like, we got, don't ever trust them. But I just was like, if you were in my inner circle and you were like, it's like, oh, that's my boy, Chad. I was like, that's your boy? I was like, are you serious? I was like, what?
Mikey is
Were there many?
Damn, you couldn't have, but
Daniel, I don't know.
Yeah, Daniel. This is Danny. This is Danny Piccarelli. This is a homie.
Well, again, to be fair to myself, and Jason knows this, there's a lot of Negroes who I can't stand. So I'm not one of these, like, I love all the black people, I hate all the way. I was like, nah, there's a lot of you Negroes I would mouth just as much I would mouth a lot of white folk. Don't get it.
You've been on a Negro mowing binge lately because,
right.
The Negroes, what Negroes don't do.
But there was, I've always had that. And I got to say, it's through dealing with Jason, who doesn't have any of these kind of anxiety. Well, I would say any, frankly. I think that Jason, because of the kind of music that he's played, has basically been in spaces that I would be like, oh, hell no. You got to be out your motherfucking mind.
Jason lived in North Dakota for a year. And not where Matt was in Fargo. I was in Williston.
Yeah, were you there for oil stuff?
I was cooking out there, but I've definitely toured in Fargo. I still can't remember the name of the venue. I think I have a poster in the trunk of my car somewhere of that show. I gotta find it because I remember saying something about it when you were on, and someone sent a picture of that night. Like sent me a picture that night we played there in like 2013 or whatever it was at that one spot in North Dakota. I played there a few times. I definitely can't remember, but it wasn't the aquarium. It was another spot in North Dakota in Fargo. I actually dug Fargo and Grand Forks. I also played a lot in Grand Forks. I actually almost moved there. I almost relocated to Grand Forks.
Even the North Dakota place is probably one of the worst as far as weather and cook.
By far.
Yeah.
By far. Weather
but
and straight up racism. Yeah.
I just think it's great. Pascal is probably the only person in this business who's getting any sort of therapeutic benefit to doing it. I think that's pretty rare.
It's really. Let me tell you why it's valuable to me, right? Is that I have a lot of, and Jason will attest to this, I have a lot of political energy. Like, my brother's very into sports. He's not into politics. Jason is very into music and politics, but more into music, I think, than politics. Generally, I'm just into politics and into politics. Like, but it's not just American politics. I'm into political history. I'm into international history. I find this stuff fun. This is kind of like my sports. This is kind of like my music, and it's entertaining. So, like Jason's always like, man, write an article. But I like, if I'm like, social media is kind of like my canvas. Well, I'll just like
Negro write an article. Stop. Don't. Hey, cut his ass. Cut his mic. Cut his mic.
But I'm saying is that I like to see people's reaction to my intellectual musings.
Okay, well, you should do it in article form.
You don't get the same immediate.
Yeah, get it. Why you can't make these video essays? I could tweet some shit out like Bill.
Video essays is definitely something I'm interested in.
I'd much rather have a salient point that I'm trying to hit than just fucking send out some message in 128 characters and sum something up extremely simply, because it's always more complicated than 128 characters, man.
I mean, I you got to learn to just judge yourself by what you do unconsciously, and I just tweet all the time. I should be. That seems to be what I want to do. But I wanted to ask one more thing, one more point about the Cosby stuff, because I think it's interesting, like your reactions and like the aspirationalness of the Cosby Show. It's also a very insidious message it gives to folks, like particularly me in like North Dakota. My experience of Black culture, Black people in general, was mediated basically through stuff like this. And what message is that sending, right, throughout the 80s?
Not rap.
Like,
You said you went to Rolling Loud, so
well, okay, yeah, fair enough. But early on, right, like this, like generally, like television, a massive thing, and like this sort of Cosby image of like, oh well, Black people are good too if they just do their homework and stuff like that. It's insidious how like double-edged and like that aspirational crap is.
The kind of character Theo is, where he's constantly a fuck up and can't get right in school, but somehow at the show ends with him graduating NYU.
I mean, listen, man. Let me tell you right now, man. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I don't know how much time we have, but I'm not going to do it because Jason is here and we're having this conversation. We can go into a long, like 20-minute cerebral riff about what Bill Cosby means in terms of the overall strategic utility of Black image in media, what Bill Cosby means in terms of the timing in which he's elevated vis-a-vis the radical civil rights movement, what Bill Cosby means in terms of the context of Black power, doing a show like I Spy, the fact you have someone like George Jackson, one of the Soledad brothers, in his book talking about who is this fool doing a TV show about spies in the era of COINTELPRO.
I did touch on that in the video essay.
Yeah, he did, making this seem cool. What I'm trying to explain to people, and a lot of people even my age weren't aware of this because we didn't grow up in the radical movement period of the New Left in the 60s, is that Bill Cosby has been a figure of counter-revolutionary politics from the beginning of his career. He's been put on intentionally to be the dialectical opposition to Dick Gregory as the acceptable, clean Black male.
Give people Dick Gregory's background in case they're not familiar.
Well, Dick Gregory was a Black comedian. I would say Dick Gregory was the first crossover Black comic success because he was invited to play at the Playboy Club. He was very well liked, and he did a very, very sharp racial humor. He was very popular. He was very successful, but he did the kind of humor that played on the internal contradictions of the racialized reality of American apartheid in the early 60s and the late 50s, and he did it very effectively. But he wasn't doing it to make white people comfortable, and he wasn't doing it to make white people laugh at him. He was doing it to have white people laugh sarcastically and ironically at themselves. And that's what made his comedy very effective at that time. And what Bill Cosby does, Bill Cosby was also a very good comedian, is that Bill Cosby's comedy was divorced from that type of sharp racial social commentary. And it was really about, hey, I'm a nice, good-looking,
but it looks the same. Don't forget to add that it looks the same.
Yeah,
it's derivative.
It is a derivative of that, but it's kind of like, hey, I'm that nice, I went to college, and you do you guys read the Bible? What do you think about the story of Noah? Hey, Noah. I mean, it's not that it's not unfunny. It's funny, but it's not social critique. It's not socially, politically sharp in any way. It's good. It's funny. He's very good at what he does. But it's not accidental that his rise in the media hierarchy, displacing Dick Gregory, getting opportunities that Gregory doesn't get, it's not accidental that this happens. Because let's not forget that this is in the period of Cold War geopolitics, where media depictions of Black life are very important to American geopolitics, which is the main reason we pivot from the image that you see of Black people in the 40s, which is Stephen Fetchit, Hattie McDaniels, in terms of Gone with the Wind, Mom's Mabley, Mantan Moreland, all of that. You get that in the 50s, all of these really derogatory, racially stereotypical, 5-inch lip, yes, balls, what's going on? That kind of nonsense on television, in film, till getting like the noble, striving Sidney Poitier in the Defiant Ones and all this other stuff, where like you have this very smooth, clean, slim, racially like stern but not angry, handsome Black man who is like the Black man for every moment in every movie. He is the one who is just perfect, and his temperament is perfect. His posture is perfect. He's not overly sexual. He's not too racially angry. He's not too militant, but yet he still has a stern kind of strong racial undertone and integrity. That's not accidental. As a matter of fact, Adolph Reed in his book Stirrings in the Jug discusses this quite eloquently, So it's now also not accidental that the year in which you have Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is the same year that the Loving decision comes down from the Supreme Court. So and this, to me, those of us who are on the left, who are Marxists, who are familiar with the Frankfurt School, this should not be surprising to us, because one of the realities of the Frankfurt School is that it teaches us to let us know that capitalist media production and the culture industry is one of the tools of reifying capitalist realism, or also being used by the state and empire to fulfill its exegesis.
Now, go ahead, David.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, and like, that's like one of the second like natures of Cosby, and like the essay goes, the video essay goes through this very well, right? That it's like, it's not just like there's like a kind of lack of like radicalism and like discomfort with, the racially segregated society that, that is America. But there was a kind of reifying or celebration of like wealth as a thing in and of itself as like a good thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And, it's selling both, I think, to, to I think like the general like African American community, Black community in the U.S., like this idea of like, oh well, the liberation is just like work hard and don't make too much trouble, and then you'll get the nice house and everything will be fine, right? And then also to a kind of white audience too, it's like, well, yeah, this is the problem if people were more following in this kind of Cosby, mold. Then we wouldn't be having social problems as a society, right? Like it's a really double ideological project there that the Cosby Show seemed to sort of play into.
And let's keep this one thing in mind as well. Like Cosby destroys the good times paradigm. That's My Mama, What's Happening, all these shows that definitely came out before your guys' time that probably were done in reruns when you guys weren't cereal in your underwear like me watching them. All those shows that were supposed to be shows about Black America, Cosby destroys. And that becomes the new show. But because of the pushback of the Cosby Show living in a fantasy world, right? Go back and read some of the critiques. There's actually some scholarly papers written on the fictitious land of Cosby that does touch on some of the points that it does miss. And then you start to have kind of still aspirational Black families like with Moesha, but there always has to be a tinge of the hood. And then the real Black experience is not Cosby, but Boys in the Hood. The real Black experience is The Chronic, right? Inner city ghetto lifestyle brand is that, and it's the Super Bowl halftime show. I thought that was fascinating. Ray and I were talking about that recently. We just did a thing for Ben Burgess. I can't wait for it to air. If you've ever seen the shit we do, we basically fuck with Ben Burgess for like 2 hours. We just fuck with him for 2 hours. But we actually brought up the whole Super Bowl shit because it's a conversation I've been having for a while that I really believe 92 was a pivotal year for hip hop to be sold as a lifestyle brand. more so than before. They stopped being reporters of the inner city. And it was like, there was nothing Snoop was reporting on in the Chronic. Nas, in my opinion, and Illmatic wasn't a reporter as well. It was like, this is my inner city lifestyle brand, and you're gonna buy malt liquor now because of it, and Dickie pants, and lowriders, and all this other shit. There was people in New York with fucking lowriders.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
go ahead,
crazy.
Pascal.
We just. I think that some of the best commentary that we do on This Is Revolution podcast is about the utility of Black cultural production and pop culture to the ruling class. That's something I've written about in about 3 or 4 articles. It's one of my favorite topics. One of the most, as a matter of fact, one of the most popular pieces that I ever wrote started off about that. Actually, it was about Kanye West and the ruling class use of popular culture, which is funny because Jason, when I said, I wrote that, right? He was like, man, I read this when it first came out. But it's really insidious. And this is not to say that the culture industry doesn't work that way for everyone. It does work. Listen, there's a utility of media and the culture industry and social engineering everyone. But because of the particular way in which there has been a paranoia about Black political rebellion in this country, going back to maybe Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, the Haitian Revolution, that has always plagued the way in which America has racialized Black communities, particularly in times of economic dislocation and exploitation. There's a particular way in which the American culture industry engages in socially engineering and demobilizing Black communities. And if you don't believe it, all you have to do is read the section of the Kerner Commission report called Negro in the Media.
Another thing I want to add that Cosby does, and I think we kind of left out, is that he's also part of the new Martin Luther King that is divorced from any sort of socialist radical. He's no longer the radical king. He's the pastor king that just wanted.
Well, he gave a speech where he said we shouldn't judge anybody, right? It's like the Fox News version of MLK, right?
Right. And Cosby definitely reaffirms that in his show, because whenever it was Martin Luther King's birthday, they'd play the speech and everyone would stare into the screen watching the I Have a Dream speech, and that's it. That's where Martin Luther King stays. Bill Cosby showed us. And now let's go get the McRib, because it's during his birthday the McRib comes out.
Yeah. Lord, I didn't realize so much was going on.
I made that.
Okay. So you got the riots, the final episode of Cosby Show, the McRib came out. It's like they fired on all cylinders trying to stop a.
But the thing is, though, right? The thing is, though, and I'm going to say this on this show, right? And Jason and I talk about this all the time, because I guess we have been deemed by some of our comrades on the Black left as readists for being, or Adolf, or Reedian.
Because you can't do this on my show, man. I'm saying the sound effects. Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, we've been considered to be quote unquote Reedian because we seem to be the only Black folk on the left who overtly embrace the scholarship and the work of Adolf and Torrey Reed, right? And I laugh at that, because when I find folk on the left, particularly the Black left, who say that, I say, those folk make those statements, and they'll at the same time say, "Well, I love the analysis you guys do on that show and your show." And I was like, that analysis comes from 2 people, Bruce Dixon and Adolf Reed.
Yeah.
And one of the frustrations I have, and I'll be very transparent, with many of the figures on the white left, is that when they invite Adolf on the show, they talk to him to basically fulfill their cynicisms about some aspect about identity politics. I want you guys to show me one episode of any white left show where they interview Adolf Reed about his scholarship on Black politics, Black political thought, or Black political history in any way.
Yeah, I think that's like to do an episode on Stirrings of the Jug. I think there might be some, first of all, hesitation to even read a book like that as a white leftist, and then to like go on but I agree, and Adolph's someone we plan to have on the show actually to talk about his upcoming book, but I think that's a fair critique. I wanted to also go ahead.
No, and I agree. I mean, because Adolph's work is quite rich, and he's like an incredible political scientist, a political theorist in general as well. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very fair point to make. I was just adding to that.
And it's interesting to come back, like the pull up your pants discourse is probably like that made it through like FM radio, right? Like that was a big split. And like you said, like I was going to ask you to historicize that, but you say like it's also at the halftime show and became a dominant form of expression of itself. But also Torre mentioned in the episode that Sanford and Son had a rent party episode, right?
Yeah.
Which I want to bring this back to a thought experiment I want to pose to you guys. If you had puppet master level control of, let's say, Hollywood and major television sort of scripted series, what and let's say it would be, let's put in the 80s, because as I realize that like that doesn't mean as much now as it probably meant like back then. So let's say 80s. How do you think that would have played out? Like I'm just curious what you think about that. What you would have done would have been more like, I'm just curious where you go with that.
What we would have done?
Yes, you two both you're more powerful in media than anybody has been, basically. And you control all this stuff. So you could, Cosby done. No one's gonna know who Cosby is. What other?
And so you're saying that we are like the kings of media?
Yes,
Hollywood executives.
Yep.
Do we still live in the current capitalist America?
It starts as everything was in 1982.
82 was the age of. Now, do we have to worry about getting assassinated, killed, interrogated?
Yes, I mean. That's kind of where my
what I would do. Myles Pascal has the caveats. I would try to make a show that is filled with the contradictions of that time. And I would try to make a show like I always talk about this scene in Colors, the movie Colors that came out in 1988, that I think it's a horrible film in the sense of it's very, very disingenuous with the time. So Colors pits the LA police department and the sheriff's department as severely undermanned and under-equipped to handle gang violence, when that just wasn't the case. Even in 84, they were just tearing up neighborhoods and tearing down houses with tanks. And in Colors, they got like crowbars trying to open up doors and shotguns. That's not even the weaponry that they had at the time. But there's a scene where there's like a town hall meeting and the citizens are asking for more police support. And growing up in Richmond, California, in this era, literally dodging bullets, literally, I remember those times. Put those guys in jail longer. That wasn't just a right-wing slogan. People on the left, the black left, like Ishmael Reed, was calling for longer prison sentences as well for drug crimes. This was the tough on crime era because we were seeing a lot of crime. No one knew where it was coming from. There was only a few people that wanted to, dig deeper on why. But it was a tough on crime era. And in that same scene, they're also saying, but stop fucking with our kids. Right. We want you guys to get the bad people, but leave our kids alone. And having shows that kind of deal with those contradictions a little bit more, I think probably would have been a little more interesting to the conversation. Because now we're looking at the conversation in retrospect, and everybody's like, that Bill Clinton was full of shit with 1994 stuff. It's like, motherfucker, I remember when you was sitting there with your hand up like, ooh, let me pull the switch. Remember Chris Rock talking about how prisons weren't hard enough. I think Teray brought it up on the show, talking about this. They need the salad toss man.
Don't forget the famous, what's my man's name? Famous black comedian who died, Richard Pryor, the famous, thank God for penitentiaries. The Richard Pryor shit.
So I think if I had the ability to have a show that could be filled with those contradictions, like the contradictions that I lived with in this neighborhood where my dad was trying to have a safe space for the kids in it because we couldn't trick or treat. So my dad would have a Halloween party so the kids can come here because you can't knock on these people's doors. My stepmom would make popcorn. We watched the crack house raids across the street. Like this was like a real reality that I lived in. It wasn't Beirut by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely the skies lit up at night sometimes. And the parents were begging for more support somewhere, services. Get something for these motherfuckers to do. Get us a speed bump, like something to slow this shit down. But also talk about the fact that a lot of people were getting swiped up as the tough on crime law started to come from the late 80s on down to what we end up getting 94.
I think for me, what I would do would be focusing on shows that would illustrate the internal contradictions of class contradiction in America amongst white people and black people to disturb notions of unified collective community, to disturb ideas that there's such thing as a white community or white people, or to disturb ideas that there are notions of quote unquote black communities or black people. Like I would do a show that will be historically correct. It will be researched well on black Louisiana slave plantation owners. And I would put a whole
tomorrow.
Well, that's our subject tomorrow, but I would do a whole TV show about that, or in South Carolina, and to disturb the whole notion that people have about universal racial interest under oppression.
I mean, I've only read this chapter that was released early from Adolf Reed's books, but I mean, it seems like a similar project there. Like Adolf in Louisiana, New Orleans, like really highlights the kind of very serious class demarcation that he experienced growing up too.
Jason can testify to this because he's probably heard me say it enough. Is that I tell Jason all the time, Jason, what state are my favorite black people in America from? That I say all the time.
Do you say Louisiana?
Louisiana. I say all the time.
Do you say Louisiana?
I always say Louisiana.
Didn't we just go on a whole tirade about how we don't like light-skinned people?
That's you. You're the one who has that problem.
Oh, okay.
But I tell Jason all the time that my favorite black folk in America come from Louisiana. He's like, why? They said, because I don't meet black folk in America who are more alive to internal black class contradiction, more so than black folk from Louisiana. And there's a reason for that, because most black folk from Louisiana can trace their heritage to Haiti. A lot of them can. And what people fail to realize is that those Creoles in Louisiana, their ancestors are Haitian. I met Mark Royale, who was a former mayor of Louisiana. He's one of my fraternity brothers. You know what the first thing he told me was? I'm Haitian. I said, what? I said, I have my great-great-great-great-grandmother's passport from Haiti when she left Haiti right around the Haitian Revolution to come to Louisiana. He has a big painting of the Citadel, which is in Haiti, in his office. He's very proud of his Haitian. All of that Louisiana Creole messed up colors and stuff, that's nothing but Haitian class color politics vomiting itself into North America.
It is on another level. I don't know how much time David ever spent in even East Texas, like Bowman, shit like that. That shit is like meeting white people damn near dark as me, them coon asses and shit in Southern Louisiana. That shit fucked me up, man. Talking about, I went to the white prom. You had a white prom? Like, where are you from? Mississippi burning?
I mean, you know, I think there's also like a little bit of a generation divide there too. But like, I mean, like those, I mean, I love all of our friends in Louisiana. I love people from Louisiana. My neighbor here is just like an incredible, you know, guy from Southern Louisiana. And he's probably one of the most interesting people I know to talk politics with. He doesn't vote ever. But I always love bringing things to his attention because you never know what you're going to get every day. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Louisiana, I did not know that Louisiana had that much of a Haitian connection. Is that dominant, or is it just like?
Are you joking me?
I'm for real.
Louisiana hoodoo?
Yeah, how was you gonna know how many Haitians it was in Louisiana?
I knew there was a lot of Haitians, but like the dominant population of black people in Haiti.
I'm not saying every black person in Louisiana can trace his race, but the Creoles of Louisiana are literally expatriated mulatto Haitians. There's documentaries on that. That's where many of them come from. Even many of the first of all, you understand something. The Louisiana territories were owned by France before they were given to, and they were owned by Spain immediately before France. But there was large numbers of imports of Africans from pre-revolutionary Haiti to the Louisiana territories and to Louisiana.
I get you.
All right. And not only that, after the Haitian Revolution begins, you have white plantation owners coming to Louisiana, North America, and Baltimore, and a lot of them, some of them are bringing slaves with them. So there are, there's a significant, as a matter of fact, the city of Louisiana, the architecture was based on a city called Jacmel in Haiti. It's a replica of Jacmel, Haiti.
Interesting.
There's profound amount of cultural continuity and historical connection between particularly New Orleans and Louisiana culture and Haiti and the Haitian Revolution.
If people are enjoying what Pascal is saying about Haiti, he's getting a piece ready for.
I don't know who yet.
You don't know where he's going to has to finish it by Sunday. So if you guys can tweet at Pascal Robert 06 and tell him finish that piece so we can learn more about Haiti.
Beyonce don't want to claim that roots. That's actually not true. There's a video of Beyonce being interviewed, basically talking about her Creole Haitian roots, trying to speak in Haitian Creole.
You leave Bay alone.
We're gonna have actually. I do.
Beyonce on?
No,
I've been working on her.
Close. We are, speaking of Haitian pride, we're gonna have Wasney Lambre on like next week. So, but yeah, he's somebody who he'll note anytime there's an NBA player or celebrity who is Haitian, he has a whole secret Haitian sort of detective service that he goes on. But we've been talking to him not about Haitians, but Ben Simmons and Kyrie. But I do think Pascal's initial reaction was right. Like, I do think if you had that kind of control and you started doing stuff like that, you'd be, whacked.
Absolutely. You get in trouble today, let alone the 80s.
Yeah. It always depresses me though, like just the way like media gets more diffuse, and there's a champion of, say, like telling new types of stories or even diversity. It's like, yeah, but that's not the Hollywood of like the 60s where it was just a cultural, fire hose that just dominated everything, right? Like it's a much depleted cultural force now. Like it's all good for white people to let other people do some of this cultural production when it's not dominant. But anyway, any final points you guys want to make before we let you go?
Go for it, Pascal.
I want to thank you guys for inviting us to Left Reckoning. I don't know why we don't do this more often. I think that, every time we get together, we have a good time. And quite frankly, I want to thank you for allowing me to kind of spill my beans about my own kind of tortured racial politics from my youth and kind of just, get some closure on your show, man. I don't know if you charge by the hour for these sessions, but
next time.
This is that safe space room at college campuses.
One thing I want to announce: please check out our interview with Yanis Varoufakis that we just did for the Real News Network today. Hopefully, we'll be airing within the next week or two. Well, definitely before the end of February.
Incredible!
And check it out.
That's awesome.
And
I'm also sure on the 22nd, we will be interviewing Adolph Reed Jr. on his new book.
They said like one thing. Did everything, and my mama's birthday is on the 15th.
And for people who are listening, like if y'all like this, definitely check out their show. This is Revolution. It's a must listen. They get everybody. I mean, they work overtime. They get all the good guests. It's a phenomenal podcast, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. So definitely be sure to check it out.
We try to have a good time, and lately Pascal has been on this like so when he made that comment earlier about he likes to like comment on social media, like the motherfucker's not playing, like he can be too much. And the episode we're doing tomorrow is like, enjoy us now, because most likely motherfuckers is gonna be coming to cancel.
Oh boy. Dude, I mean, can I just I have a question, like, is there something going on? Like, I've been feeling really, really like prickly these days too. Like I'm just like done with a lot of shit.
Dude, let
like,
me
some
say
things
this.
I would tiptoeing around recently. Like I'm done. I'm furious about.
Let me say this, D, please, before we go. I want to say
Yeah.
this on air so people understand that there's like no beef. I called the Majority Report the other day, and I didn't think anyone would recognize my voice because I don't think, like, who fuck knows?
You got a pretty recognizable one for
Who the
Yeah,
fuck
you got it.
knows me? You know, say that when I get a big YouTube check, right? I'll fucking listen to that shit. And I've only talked to Emma Vick like one time. So I'm like, anyway, she's like, oh, fuck. And I don't know if Matt was like, it's Jason. I don't know what's said, right? People were like acting like there's a fight and there's beef. It's like, look, I think that people can disagree or have a conversation, and it doesn't have to be a circle jerk.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with Matt, Leck or Bender or Emma or any of those people. I think they're nice people.
You're being really diplomatic. I'm completely in the dark right
It's
now.
fucking, I was like, people were saying, hell, I had to look back because I couldn't have the thing on when I called, so I didn't see the chat. I was like, oh man, people were calling me a Republican and shit. I was like, oh fuck, it was bad.
Well, I'll say for the record too that I don't think that there's any beef between me and Majority Report, even though that they've never had me on their show.
You gotta say the right thing to Sam Cedar.
Yeah.
Fucking wrote about punk music. You didn't write about
Sam's got a thing against Texans, so
it's because one time, a long ass time ago, when we were in TMBS, we drank. I guess I drank, and a few other people drank Sam's like scotch or something.
Was that the first
shows? We had great shows with Emma and Sam.
Yeah, man. People just
people also want to see like every pod fight too. Like that's like there's a dream. Not our fans, because our fans are lovely, but everyone else's fans is trying to get people to like go to war with each other for, I don't know. I mean,
because that's engagement. That's engagement.
Yeah.
Like you see how people like that, they're just so conditioned for, like, frankly, heresy hunting. It's a bad tendency. But yeah, Jason, you are also. We'll try to modulate your voice or something next time.
You gotta you call on your end with your like soundboard, right? Or do like a robot voice when you call hello.
Dude, I'm like, God, no one knows the fuck I am. I was like, I don't know how to lie and say I'm not in Mexico either. I could have just lied and said, I'm Fred from Michigan. I think
they let
Jason,
Fred on.
You should call in as Fred from Michigan. And
can I tell you something funny? And I'll stop fucking with you. I shit you not. I wish I was making this up. Matt fucking Leck. Me and Marcus from Left Flank Vets were laughing our asses off, talking about how we were going to call the Majority Report and lie and say we were going to talk to Sam like we wanted to debate him, like we were pro wrestlers. The next day, I was exercising here. I wish I could show you this room. I just want to show you how, because that's how fucking surreal this shit.
There we go. We get a room reveal.
Get a room reveal. Can you see the shit?
No, actually, I see a wire.
You got to see the whole house. I got a view, David. It's bad as shit.
Oh hell yeah, man.
Oh man. Anyway, the next day, that motherfucker called. That Hinkle guy called.
Oh yeah.
I was like, no way. Because I thought it was a joke. I didn't know that. I thought it was a joke. I was like, didn't you hear me and Marcus had this off-air talk. Does he know this was a joke that we was having? I didn't know that shit was real.
Yeah, unfortunately it was. It was really time consuming.
We were totally talking about like fucking and calling like Sam, like talking to him like a pro wrestler and shit. Didn't know that guy was a real thing, dude.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
We got to have Marcus on too, actually.
That's our dude, man. Marcus is our guy.
Good.
Marcus
I like him a lot.
Marcus is infamous because we'll do a whole show. Marcus will sit there like this, and we'll get to the end and be like, well, listen, I have a question. Like,
tried to get Marcus to come in for me tomorrow because I'm like, man, I just can't get canceled right now. I got to pay this.
You're not gonna get canceled.
Well, damn, we're definitely gonna have to be tuning in tomorrow. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, no, I don't think you guys are gonna get canceled. We'll be there. We'll be your human shields, so we'll get out there.
This is one where white people cannot stand in front of us this time.
Damn it! All right, well,
Jason understands that I have no problem pissing black people off, and I'm very good at it generally, and I want to be very honest, and Jason knows this. I enjoy shattering ideological sacred cows of people in general, but I particularly like doing it to black folk when they, particularly the sacred cows, are motherfuckers who I can't stand. And I'm very good at it. And I've been basically all of Black History Month going back to January. I've been doing it rather consistently. And I'm not getting too much pushback. I'm just getting a lot of, I can't believe he's saying this. And when I don't get a lot of pushback, that means I know people are like, this is really true. And I can't believe this is really true.
Yeah, I'm not ready for the pushback, man. I remember my mom got mad at me when I thought it was funny to put Harriet Tubman on the black Amex card.
I wouldn't do that. That's different. See, that's different. I don't do it disrespectfully. You do it disrespectfully.
What time is that tomorrow?
9 p.m.
It's at 6, man. The book is actually an interesting book. I'm reading it, but we're talking about Negroes owning Negroes.
We're talking about black slave ownership by free people of color.
Free people of color during.
We're going to talk about free people of color communities overall, but we're also going to be talking about free people of color slave ownership.
It's February, bro. You know you're not supposed to be saying that shit during February.
Man,
March. Like I said, it should march all day long.
We gotta go, guys. Okay. That was great, Pascal and Jason. This is Revolution Podcast. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Get them to 10,000. You guys are cruising. Go subscribe to the channel. It's one of the best.
Yeah, do it right now.
And we're talking about doing a crossover episode. We want to do one like once every other month where you can watch us together at the same time on both channels and super chat both channels and all that fun shit, because I love these dudes and I think they do good work. I definitely love putting your show on and learning a few thing or two about, especially when you're doing the organizing shows. I really like that shit there. So.
Likewise, y'all. Let's do it again soon.
For sure.
Take care, friends.
Peace.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about those guys is you knew it was going to be a great conversation. I mean, we went 30 minutes before we got to what I prepared for.
We actually, I don't even think we got to some of the things we had prepared. But
no, but you know what I like about that is, and this is like Pascal, the thing where he says about he's into politics, right? And I think I fucking dig that in people. I just want to say, like, there are people who that's clear that they're like that. Matt Chrisman, I was just listening to him and Danny Bessner on Hinge Points, because I'm going through a big Civil War thing.
Yeah,
and it's just like, all these sorts of theoretical, quagmires. Like, what is the relationship between electoral politics and revolution? Well, it's like, you can kind of fucking look and see it in motion, and the answer is it's complicated, but there's a lot to fucking learn. And you really can't do this without being like that, I think. Right. And that's why a lot of if you just debate people on YouTube all the time, it's a lot easier to do than investing in your understanding of the world. But that's ultimately what people come to us for, right? It's anybody here that dedicates their time to a leftism show, they're ultimately looking for help in interpreting the world around them, basically. And I don't know, I'm kind of going off, but that's
which is ideal versus what some of the other people who sort of, I don't know, man, I've been mad all week, versus other people who literally the entire show is sort of set up to tell people how to feel about things, which I think is actually extremely unhelpful.
Yes.
Should you feel good about this event or bad about this event? And I think that's the most unhelpful. If you want to change things, that's the most unhelpful way to get involved. Like, you should try to understand why things are happening and like what that means, rather than like, should I like this thing or not like this thing?
Yes.
Because frankly, how you feel about things personally, like, actually like does not fucking matter.
Yeah.
But what that means for like society, what's happening in material reality, what's happening within class conflict, like that matters.
Absolutely.
From everything from who's winning elections to what, protest is going on. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And so that's why it's like just Pascal, we had him on Majority Report to talk about Haitian. It's just like guys like that, and we come into contact with a few people like this. I think Ben Burgess is like this too. People who have Harvey, like a lot of our elders, like those folks. It's really nice when people have a passion for stuff like this. Anyway, I think we should move to the post game.
Me too. I think we're primed for it. Folks, we got fun stuff. We got James Lindsay. Matt is going to talk to me about everyone's favorite. Remember, James Lindsay, the Marxism understander, is going to explain some really exciting things about China and fascism and capitalism dialectics. Will be illuminated on the other side. Matt has a radical proposal for solving poverty in this, not just country, but globally, which is privatizing the moon. He'll be breaking
solar system wide, actually.
Solar system wide. He'll be breaking down that plan for us. And we'll be taking y'all's voicemails. Remember, you can get those all on patreon.com/leftreckoning. Love hearing from folks. Love getting those voicemails. So get on the other side, and we'll see you there.
Peace out, folks.